The limousine exploded in a ball of fire. Marcus Cole watched the white car flip through the air and crash into the ravine below. His Belgian Malinois was already barking, clawing at the truck door. Marcus didn't think. He ran. 50 feet down, flames everywhere he found her. A bride in a blood-soaked wedding gown pinned in the wreckage, screaming. He smashed the window. She grabbed his arm with fingers like claws and pulled him close. "My husband planted the bomb," she gasped. "He's going to kill me." Marcus ripped her free. The car exploded again, and a Navy SEAL who wanted to disappear found himself at war. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe and stay with us until the very end. The rain came down like God was angry. Marcus Cole gripped the steering wheel of his old Ford pickup, his knuckles white against the worn leather. The wipers fought a losing battle against the storm, slashing back and forth in a rhythm that matched the pounding in his chest. He hadn't slept properly in 3 weeks. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces. 8 men, his brothers, gone in a flash of light and thunder in some forgotten valley in Afghanistan. Shadow whined from the passenger seat. "I know, buddy," Marcus said, his voice rough. "Almost there. Just a few more miles." The Belgian Malinois pressed his nose against the foggy window, his breath leaving circles on the glass. Shadow had been with Marcus for 6 years now. They'd survived Helmand Province together, walked through fire together, buried friends together. When the Navy offered Marcus administrative leave after the ambush, Shadow came with him. The dog was the only family Marcus had left. The headlights barely cut through the downpour. Marcus was heading to his grandfather's cabin in the Shenandoah Valley. A place with no phone signal, no internet, no memories. A place where he could sit in silence and try to remember how to be human again. That's when he saw the lights. A white stretch limousine was racing down the mountain road behind him, its high beams blinding in the rearview mirror. Marcus frowned. Who drove a limousine up here? In this weather? "That's trouble," he muttered. Shadow growled low and deep. The limousine tried to pass on a blind curve. Marcus watched it happen like it was in slow motion. The long vehicle hydroplaned its rear tires, spinning uselessly on the wet asphalt. The driver overcorrected. The car fishtailed. And then it was gone. The limousine smashed through the guardrail and disappeared over the cliff edge. Marcus slammed his brakes. The truck skidded to a stop on the gravel shoulder, and he was out the door before the engine stopped running. "Shadow with me." The dog leaped out behind him, landing in the mud with practiced grace. Marcus ran to the broken guardrail and aimed his flashlight down into the darkness. The limousine had crashed onto a rocky ledge about 50 feet below, wrapped around a cluster of pine trees. Smoke was already rising from the crumpled hood. The smell of gasoline hit him immediately. Fire. Soon. "Let's go," Marcus said. He didn't think about his own safety. He'd spent 20 years running toward danger while everyone else ran away. It was instinct now. He grabbed roots and rocks, sliding down the muddy embankment with Shadow right beside him. The dog moved like a ghost, finding footing where Marcus struggled. They reached the wreckage in under a minute. The driver's side was completely crushed against a tree. No one could have survived that impact. But the rear of the car was intact, the windows spider-webbed with cracks but still holding. Marcus pressed his face to the glass and shone his light inside. His heart stopped. There was a woman in there. Young, maybe late 20s, with dark hair plastered to her face with blood and sweat. She was wearing a wedding dress, a massive, expensive-looking gown of white silk and lace, now stained with crimson. She was huddled on the floor of the car, trembling violently, her eyes wide with terror. She saw the light. She saw him. "Help me," she whispered through the glass. "Please, please help me." Marcus tried the door handle. Jammed. The frame was bent from the impact. "I'm going to get you out," he called through the window. "Can you move? Are you trapped?" "The door won't open," she said, her voice rising with panic. "He locked it. He locked me in. The seatbelt, I can't." Shadow started barking urgently. Marcus looked down and saw what the dog had found. Gasoline was dripping steadily from the ruptured fuel tank pooling beneath the car, and near the exhaust pipe, a small orange flame was beginning to dance. They had maybe 2 minutes. Probably less. "Listen to me," Marcus said, keeping his voice calm and steady, the voice he used when everything was falling apart. "I need you to stay calm. I'm going to break this window. Cover your face." The woman nodded, pulling her arms over her head. Marcus smashed the window with the butt of his tactical knife. Glass exploded inward, and he immediately started clearing the jagged edges with his gloved hands. "Give me your hand," he ordered. She reached for him, her fingers cold and slick with blood. He grabbed her wrist and pulled, but she jerked back with a cry of pain. "I'm stuck. The seatbelt, it's jammed, and my dress." Marcus leaned into the car, ignoring the heat that was starting to build beneath the floor. The seatbelt mechanism had locked during the crash, trapping her in place, and the massive train of her wedding gown was tangled in the twisted metal of the doorframe. The flames were growing. Shadow was barking frantically now. "Hold still," Marcus said. He slashed the seatbelt with one clean stroke of his knife. The woman gasped as the pressure released, but when he tried to pull her again, the dress held her back. "Leave it!" Marcus shouted. "The dress, it doesn't matter. I can't, it's caught." Shadow didn't wait for a command. The dog launched himself through the broken window, landing in the cramped space beside the woman. He grabbed a mouthful of the tangled fabric and bit down hard, shaking his head violently. The expensive silk tore like paper. "Now!" Marcus roared. "Move!" He grabbed the woman under her arms and hauled her through the window. She screamed as the remaining glass scraped her skin, but Marcus didn't stop. He threw her over his shoulder and started climbing. Behind them, the flames reached the fuel tank. "Down!" Marcus dove behind a boulder, covering the woman with his body. Shadow pressed against them, his fur bristling. The explosion lit up the night. The force of it shook the ground beneath them. Heat washed over Marcus's back like a wave. Debris rained down around them, metal glass burning fabric. He kept his body between the woman and the fire until the initial blast subsided. Then silence. Just the crackling of flames and the relentless rain. Marcus lifted his head. Where the limousine had been, there was now only a burning skeleton of twisted metal. The woman beneath him was sobbing. Deep, racking sobs that shook her entire body. Marcus rolled off her, gently giving her space to breathe. "You're okay," he said. "You're safe now. It's over." But she shook her head violently, clutching at his jacket with desperate fingers. "No," she gasped. "No, it's not over. He did this. He tried to kill me." Marcus frowned. The driver, there was no driver. Her eyes met his, and he saw something there that he recognized. The look of someone who had stared into the face of evil and survived. It was remote-controlled. Dominic, my husband, he put me in that car. He told me we were driving to the reception, but the car started going by itself. And then... She broke down again, her words dissolving into sobs. Marcus looked at Shadow. The dog's ears were flat against his skull, his body tense. Shadow knew the sound of a bomb. He'd spent years sniffing them out in Afghanistan. And now he was looking at the burning wreckage with an expression that Marcus understood perfectly. This wasn't an accident. "What's your name?" Marcus asked gently. "Vivian," she whispered. "Vivian Ashford." "Vivian, I'm Marcus. This is Shadow. We're going to help you. But I need you to tell me everything. Why would your husband want you dead?" Vivian looked up at him, rain and tears streaming down her face. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible over the storm. "Because I found his vault. I found what he's been hiding, and I took pictures of everything." Marcus felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, the sharpening of his senses that came before every mission. He'd driven into these mountains looking for peace. Instead, he'd found a war. "Can you walk?" he asked. Vivian nodded weakly. "Then we need to move. Now. If your husband sent that car, he's going to send someone to make sure you're dead." He helped her to her feet. She was shaking so badly she could barely stand, but she leaned on him without hesitation. Shadow moved ahead of them, his nose working the air, his body alert for any threat. They climbed back up to the road. Marcus's truck was still there, the engine running, the headlights cutting through the rain. He opened the passenger door and helped Vivian inside, then lifted Shadow into the back seat. "Where are we going?" Vivian asked as Marcus slid behind the wheel. "Somewhere safe," he said. "Somewhere no one will find us." He pulled back onto the road and drove into the darkness. The hospital was supposed to be a refuge. St. Catherine's Medical Center was a small regional facility, the kind of place where nurses knew their patients by name, and the biggest excitement was usually a broken bone from a hiking accident. Marcus had driven for 40 minutes through the storm to get here, and by the time he carried Vivian through the emergency room doors, she was barely conscious. "I need help," Marcus shouted. "Car accident victim. She's got lacerations and possible internal injuries." The staff moved quickly. Within minutes, Vivian was on a gurney being wheeled toward the trauma bay. A young nurse tried to stop Marcus from following. "Sir, you'll need to wait in the lobby." "I'm not leaving her," Marcus said flatly. Something in his voice, or maybe in his eyes, made the nurse step aside. They put Vivian in room 304. Marcus stood in the corner with Shadow at his feet, watching as doctors examined her wounds. The cuts were superficial, mostly from the glass. No internal bleeding. No broken bones. She was lucky. Incredibly lucky. But Marcus knew that luck didn't last. He'd seen enough to know that Vivian's story was true. The way the car had moved, the way the explosion had happened, it all pointed to a deliberate attack. Someone with resources, someone with power, someone who wouldn't stop just because their first attempt had failed. Vivian woke up an hour later. Her eyes snapped open, and she immediately tried to sit up, panic flooding her face. "Easy," Marcus said, moving to her bedside. "You're safe. You're in a hospital." "Hospital?" Vivian's voice was hoarse. No, I can't be here. He'll find me. Dominic has people everywhere. The police, the hospitals, he donates millions to them. They all owe him." "Slow down," Marcus said. "Tell me who Dominic is. Tell me everything." Vivian took a shaky breath. Shadow had jumped onto the foot of her bed, his head resting on her ankle. She reached down absently and touched his fur, drawing comfort from his warmth. "Dominic Blackwell," she said. "You might have heard of him. Hedge fund billionaire, art collector, philanthropist. His face is on magazine covers. He gives speeches about preserving history and protecting cultural heritage." Marcus nodded slowly. The name was familiar. He'd seen it in newspapers, on television, always associated with charity galas and museum openings. "I'm a historical preservationist," Vivian continued, "an architect. Dominic hired me 18 months ago to restore Thornbrook Estate, a Civil War-era mansion in Virginia. He said he wanted to turn it into a museum and educational center. It was supposed to be my dream project." Her voice cracked. "He charmed me. God, he was so charming. The dinners, the gifts, the way he listened when I talked about my work. I thought I'd found someone who understood me, Someone who loved me for who I was, not just what I could do for him. But you found something, Marcus said. Something he didn't want you to see. Vivian nodded, her jaw tightening. 2 days ago, I was working late in the mansion's wine cellar. I was documenting the original stonework when I noticed something strange. The wall thickness didn't match the original blueprints. There was a hollow space behind it. She closed her eyes. I found the mechanism, a hidden door. It led to a tunnel system beneath the estate tunnels that weren't on any historical record, and at the end of the tunnel there was a vault. What was in the vault? Artifacts. Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper. Hundreds of them. Egyptian statues, Greek pottery, Mesopotamian tablets, all of them stolen. I recognized some pieces from Interpol's most wanted list, items that had been looted from museums and archaeological sites around the world. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't just a domestic dispute. This was international crime. Terrorism, possibly. There were ledgers, Vivian continued. Physical books with handwritten records, names, dates, payments. Dominic isn't just collecting stolen art. He's trafficking it, using the restoration projects as cover. The antique columns and architectural elements, he's hiding artifacts inside them, shipping them through his legitimate preservation business. Who's buying? Everyone. Vivian's voice was bitter. Private collectors, foreign governments, people whose names I couldn't even pronounce. And the money, millions of dollars flowing through shell companies, some of it going to organizations that are definitely on government watch lists. Marcus understood now. Dominic Blackwell wasn't just a criminal. He was a national security threat. You took pictures, Marcus said. Yes, everything. The artifacts, the ledgers, the shipping records. I put them on a micro SD card. Vivian reached up and touched a small, waterproof locket around her neck. It's in here. I didn't trust the cloud. I knew if Dominic found out, he'd destroy any digital evidence. So what happened? Vivian's eyes filled with tears. I tried to leave. I packed a bag, called a taxi, and tried to walk out the door. But Dominic was waiting for me. He knew. Somehow he knew. He smiled at me, that beautiful smile I used to love, and he said, "Where do you think you're going, darling? We have a wedding to attend." She started to shake. He forced me into the wedding dress. His men held me down while the makeup artists worked. He said if I didn't smile during the ceremony, he'd have my mother killed, my sister, everyone I loved. The ceremony happened. Yes, in the garden of the estate. 200 guests. Senators, celebrities, business leaders. Everyone watching me walk down the aisle to a monster. And I smiled. I smiled because I had no choice. Vivian wiped her eyes roughly. After the reception, Dominic told me we were leaving for our honeymoon. He put me in the limousine himself. He kissed my cheek and told me he loved me. Then he closed the door, and the car started moving by itself. The locks engaged. I couldn't open the doors, couldn't break the windows, and the car just kept going faster and faster, heading toward the mountains. The brakes, Marcus asked. There were no brakes. Nothing worked. I was trapped in a coffin on wheels waiting to die. She looked up at Marcus, her eyes burning with a mixture of grief and rage. And then you appeared. You and your dog. And suddenly I wasn't dead. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. "You're not going to die," he said. "Not tonight. Not ever, if I have anything to say about it. But you need to trust me. Can you do that?" Vivian studied his face. She saw the scars, the hardness, the weight of something terrible behind his eyes. But she also saw something else. Something steady. Something true. "Yes," she whispered. "I trust you." Shadow lifted his head and growled. Marcus spun toward the door, his hand moving instinctively to the pistol concealed beneath his jacket. The growl deepened, becoming a rumble that vibrated through the room. "Someone's coming," Marcus said quietly. The door handle began to turn. The man who entered was wearing hospital scrubs, a surgical mask covering the lower half of his face. His name tag read, Dr. Harrison. But Marcus knew immediately that this was no doctor. The man's eyes were wrong. Cold. Flat. The eyes of someone who had killed before, and would kill again, without hesitation. "Time for your medication, Mrs. Blackwell," the man said, his voice smooth and professional. He was holding a syringe filled with clear liquid. Vivian pressed herself back against the pillows, her face white with terror. "That's not, I haven't been prescribed doctor's orders." The fake orderly stepped closer, reaching for the IV line attached to Vivian's arm. Shadow launched himself off the bed. 80 pounds of muscle and teeth slammed into the assassin's chest, driving him backward against the wall. The syringe flew from his hand and shattered on the floor. Shadow's jaws clamped around the man's forearm, and he bit down with crushing force. The assassin screamed. Marcus was already moving. He grabbed the man by the throat and slammed his head into the wall. Once. Twice. The assassin's body went limp, and Shadow released his arm, stepping back with blood on his muzzle. Marcus checked the man's pulse. Alive, but unconscious. "What was in that syringe?" Vivian asked, her voice trembling. Marcus sniffed the broken glass on the floor, the faint smell of bitter almonds. "Potassium chloride. It would have stopped your heart, made it look like a cardiac event from the accident trauma." He searched the unconscious man, quickly finding a concealed pistol, a backup knife, and a phone with no contacts or call history. Professional. Clean. "Your husband doesn't waste time," Marcus said grimly. "I told you." Vivian was already pulling the IV from her arm. "He has people everywhere." "Then we're not staying here." Marcus moved to the window and peered through the blinds. In the parking lot below, a black SUV had just pulled up to the emergency entrance. 2 more men in dark suits stepped out, moving with the coordinated efficiency of military contractors. "We've got more company," Marcus said. "Can you walk? I'll run if I have to." Good. She was stronger than she looked. Marcus grabbed a heavy blanket from the closet and wrapped it around Vivian's shoulders, covering her hospital gown and the remnants of her wedding dress. Shadow was already at the door, his ears flat, his body tense. "Stay close," Marcus said. "Don't speak. Don't stop. If shooting starts, get behind me and don't look back." Vivian nodded, her jaw set with determination. They slipped into the hallway. The hospital was quiet at this hour. Most of the staff concentrated at the nurses' station around the corner. Marcus led them the opposite direction toward the service elevators. Behind them, he heard voices. "Check every room. Start with trauma." They were already searching. Marcus picked up the pace, half carrying Vivian as they reached the elevator. He jabbed the button for the basement. The doors closed just as footsteps rounded the corner behind them. The elevator descended. Marcus counted the seconds. "Where are we going?" Vivian whispered. "Service entrance, loading dock. I've got a truck outside. And then, somewhere they'll never find us." The elevator opened into the basement. Morgue to the left. Storage to the right, loading dock straight ahead. Marcus led them through the maze of corridors, Shadow scouting ahead, until they reached a heavy metal door. Cold night air rushed in as Marcus pushed it open. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still slick with water. His truck was parked on the street 50 yards away. "Run," Marcus said. They ran. Vivian's bare feet slapped against the wet concrete. Shadow sprinted ahead, checking corners, watching for threats. Marcus stayed behind her, shielding her body with his own. They were 20 yards from the truck when headlights flared. The black SUV came around the corner fast, its engine roaring. Marcus saw the passenger window lower, saw the barrel of a gun emerge. Down! He tackled Vivian to the ground as bullets tore through the air above them. Shadow circled back, barking furiously, trying to draw the shooter's attention. Marcus drew his pistol and returned fire. 1 shot, 2 shots. The SUV's windshield shattered, and the vehicle swerved wildly, crashing into a parked ambulance. Go! Marcus hauled Vivian to her feet and shoved her toward the truck. Get in! She ran. Shadow was right beside her, herding her like a sheepdog. Marcus provided cover firing at the SUV until his magazine was empty. Vivian yanked open the passenger door and threw herself inside. Shadow leaped in behind her. Marcus was there a second later, sliding behind the wheel and jamming the keys into the ignition. The engine roared to life. He floored the accelerator, and the truck fish-tailed out of the parking lot, just as more men emerged from the hospital doors, their guns raised. Bullets punched through the tailgate, shattering the rear window. Vivian screamed, covering her head. Shadow pressed against her, whimpering but steady. Marcus didn't slow down. He took the corners hard, weaving through the empty streets until the hospital was lost in the distance. Only then did he allow himself to breathe. "Are you hit?" he asked. Vivian checked herself with trembling hands. "No, I don't think so." "Shadow?" The dog licked his chops and wagged his tail once, unharmed. Marcus let out a long breath. "Okay, we're clear for now, but they'll be tracking us. We need to get off the grid." "Where?" Vivian's voice was small. "Where can we possibly go that Dominic won't find us?" Marcus looked at her. In the darkness, her face was pale, her eyes hollow with exhaustion and fear. But beneath all that, he saw something else, a spark of fire that refused to die. "My grandfather's cabin," he said. "Up in the Shenandoah Valley. No phone signal, no internet, no records. It's not on any map Dominic Blackwell has ever seen." "And then what?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was hard as iron. "Then we figure out how to take him down. You've got the evidence. I've got the training. And Dominic Blackwell just made the biggest mistake of his life." "What's that?" Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror at the dark road behind them. At the dog who had saved his life 100 times. At the woman who had survived what should have been her execution. "He let you live," Marcus said. "And now you're not alone anymore." Vivian looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out and took his hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Shadow put his head on her shoulder and sighed, and together they drove into the mountains, leaving the fire behind them. But the war was just beginning. The cabin emerged from the darkness like a ghost from another century. Vivian hadn't spoken for the last hour of the drive. She sat curled against the passenger door, the hospital blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders, watching the endless trees blur past. Shadow had moved from the back seat to rest his head on her lap, and her fingers moved absently through his fur, finding comfort in his warmth. Marcus killed the engine, and the silence rushed in. For a moment, neither of them moved. "We're here," Marcus said quietly. Vivian looked at the structure before them. "This is where we hide. This is where we survive." He helped her out of the truck, one arm steady around her waist as her bare feet touched the cold ground. Shadow jumped out and immediately began patrolling the perimeter, his nose working the air. Inside the cabin was dark and cold. Marcus lit a kerosene lamp, and the warm glow pushed back the shadows. He moved to the fireplace and began building a fire with the efficiency of someone who had done it 1,000 times. "There's clothes in that chest," he said without looking up. "My grandfather's old stuff. Not fashionable, but warm." Vivian found a flannel shirt and thick wool socks. She disappeared into the small bathroom to change, and when she emerged, she looked like a different person. The ruined wedding dress was gone. In its place was a woman drowning in red plaid, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. "Better," Marcus said. "I look ridiculous." "You look alive. That's all that matters." The fire caught, and heat began to fill the room. Vivian sank onto the worn couch, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Shadow immediately jumped up beside her, pressing his body against hers. "He likes you," Marcus observed. "He saved my life, twice now. He has good instincts about people." Marcus sat in the chair across from her, his eyes never quite still, always scanning the windows, the door. "He didn't like Dominic, did he?" Vivian's head snapped up. "How did you know?" "Dogs know. They sense things we can't. If Shadow had met your husband, he would have growled." "He never met him." Vivian's voice was bitter. "Dominic said he was allergic. Now I wonder if he just knew the dog would see through him." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Tell me more. Everything you can remember about the estate, the tunnels, the operation. Details matter." Vivian closed her eyes, forcing herself back into the nightmare. Thornbrook Estate was built in 1858. A plantation house, later a hospital during the Civil War. Dominic bought it 3 years ago for his foundation, the Blackwell Heritage Initiative. Sounds noble. That's the point. He positions himself as a savior of history. Tax write-offs. Good publicity, access to powerful people. But the restoration projects are covers. Every mansion, every historical building he saves becomes part of his network. How does the smuggling work? The artifacts are hidden inside architectural elements, antique columns, decorative moldings, restored furniture. They're shipped out as preservation materials to museums and private collections around the world, but the real cargo is inside. Marcus nodded slowly. "And the tunnels at Thornbrook? They connect the main house to an old boathouse on the river. During the Civil War, they were used to move supplies. Now Dominic uses them to receive shipments without anyone seeing. The artifacts come in by boat at night, get processed in the vault, and leave as legitimate restoration pieces. How many people know? His inner circle only. Maybe 10, 12 people. All of them terrified of him." Vivian opened her eyes. "You have to understand, Dominic isn't just wealthy. He's connected. Senators, judges, law enforcement. Half the political establishment in Virginia owes him favors. That's why I couldn't go to the police. I didn't know who I could trust." "So you ran?" "I tried to run, and look where that got me." Shadow whined softly, sensing her distress. Vivian stroked his head, drawing strength from his presence. "The evidence," Marcus said. "Show me." Vivian reached up and unclasped the small, waterproof locket from around her neck. Inside was a micro SD card, barely bigger than her fingernail. Such a small thing. Such a deadly thing. Marcus retrieved a ruggedized military laptop from his pack. "This belonged to my team's tech specialist. It's secure, no connection to any network." He inserted the card and turned the screen toward Vivian. She navigated through the files with practiced fingers. "Here." She pulled up a photograph of the hidden vault. "These are Egyptian artifacts. 3rd Dynasty. Stolen from the Cairo Museum during the Revolution. Interpol has been looking for them for years." She clicked to another image. Greek pottery. Mesopotamian cylinder seals. Roman coins. How much is all this worth? Hundreds of millions. Maybe more. Marcus whistled low. "And the ledgers?" Vivian opened another file. Photographs of handwritten pages dense with numbers and names. This is the real treasure. Dates, amounts, buyers, sellers. Everything needed to bring down his entire operation. She pointed to a column of figures. These payments go to a shell company in the Caymans. From there, the money moves to accounts linked to organizations on the terrorist watch list. He's funding terrorism. Indirectly. I don't think Dominic cares about politics or ideology. He cares about money. But his clients include people who do care about those things. Very much. Marcus stared at the screen, his jaw tight. This wasn't just a case for the FBI. This was a matter of national security, the kind of thing that got people killed in black sites around the world. "We need to get this to the right people," he said. "Not local police, not even regular FBI. We need federal prosecutors, national security divisions, people who can't be bought." And how do we do that? Dominic is probably already spinning the story. Poor billionaire's bride went crazy, had an accident, tragic loss. Meanwhile, his people are hunting us. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to the window, staring out into the darkness. "I know someone," he said finally. "Someone I trust with my life. If anyone can get this evidence to the right hands, it's him." "Who?" "His name is Samuel Chen. We called him Cypher. Best tech specialist I ever worked with. He was on my team until an IED took his leg. Now he does freelance work, secure communications, data encryption, the kind of things that keep people alive. Can you reach him?" Marcus pulled out a battered satellite phone. "I can try." He dialed a number from memory and waited. The phone clicked twice, then a familiar voice answered. "Hawk, that you—" "Yeah, Cypher. It's me. You're supposed to be decomposing in some mountain cabin, not making calls at 3 in the morning. What's wrong?" "Everything. I've got a situation. Civilian asset, critical evidence, hostile pursuit. I need your help." There was a pause. "How hot? Nuclear, international smuggling, terrorism, financing, attempted murder. The whole package." Another pause, longer this time. "Send me your coordinates. I'll be there by morning." "Cypher, save it, Hawk. You never called unless it mattered. I'm on my way." The line went dead. Marcus turned back to Vivian. "He's coming." "Can we trust him?" "With everything. Cypher and I went through hell together. He's the reason I'm still alive." Vivian nodded slowly. For the first time since the crash, she felt a tiny spark of hope. They weren't alone anymore. "Get some sleep," Marcus said. "I'll keep watch." "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see the car, the flames." Marcus sat down beside her on the couch, not touching but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I know," he said quietly. "I spent 3 years seeing my team's faces every time I closed my eyes. 8 men, brothers. They trusted me to bring them home and I failed." Vivian looked at him. "What happened?" "Ambush in the Arghandab Valley. We were extracting a local asset when the insurgents hit us. RPGs, heavy machine guns, the works. We never had a chance." His voice was flat, controlled, but she could hear the pain beneath. "I was the only one who walked out. I still don't know why." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's not your burden." He met her eyes. "But I made a promise after that. I promised that if I ever had the chance to save someone again, I wouldn't hesitate. I wouldn't fail. Not again." Vivian reached out and took his hand. His skin was rough-scarred, the hand of a warrior, but his grip was gentle. "You saved me," she said. "You didn't fail." Marcus looked at their joined hands. Something shifted in his eyes, a wall crumbling just a little. "Not yet," he said. "We're not done yet." Shadow yawned loudly and stretched out between them, his tail thumping against the couch. The tension broke, and Vivian actually smiled. "I think he's ready for bed, even if we're not. Shadow has the right idea. Try to rest. Even an hour helps." Vivian leaned back against the couch, her eyes growing heavy despite her fear. The warmth of the fire, the weight of the dog against her, the steady presence of Marcus beside her, it all combined into something she hadn't felt in months. Safety. She was asleep within minutes. Marcus watched her for a long moment, then turned his gaze to the window, and the darkness beyond. The night was quiet, but he knew it wouldn't last. Dawn came gray and cold. Vivian woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of wood being split outside. She sat up momentarily disoriented, then remembered where she was. The cabin. The mountains. Marcus. Shadow was gone from the couch, but appeared immediately at her side, tail wagging. "Good morning to you too," she murmured, scratching behind his ears. She found Marcus on the porch, an axe in his hands, a pile of fresh-cut firewood at his feet. He moved with controlled power, each swing precise and efficient. "You should be resting," he said without stopping. "I've rested enough. I need to do something. I'm going crazy just sitting here." Marcus set down the axe and wiped his brow. "All right, then it's time for your first lesson." "Lesson?" He reached behind his back and produced a handgun. A Sig Sauer P226, sleek and deadly. Vivian took a step back. "I hate guns." "Dominic had them, didn't he? He collected them. He liked the power." "This isn't about power." Marcus held the weapon out to her grip first. "It's about survival. If they find us when they find us, I can't protect you alone. You need to be able to stand with me, not just hide behind me." Vivian stared at the gun. Her hands were shaking. "I don't know if I can." "You survived a bomb. You survived an assassination attempt. You've already proven you can do hard things." Marcus's voice was firm but kind. "This is just one more." Slowly, Vivian reached out and took the weapon. It was heavier than she expected, cold and foreign in her grip. "Safety here," Marcus said, guiding her fingers. "Magazine release here. This is how you rack the slide." For the next hour, he walked her through the basics. Stance, grip, sight, picture, trigger control. Vivian was clumsy at first, her movements uncertain, but she listened with fierce concentration. "Don't anticipate the recoil," Marcus said. "Let it surprise you. Focus on the front sight, not the target." She fired 3 rounds into a paper target nailed to a dead tree. The first shot went wide. The second hit the edge. The third punched through the center. "Better," Marcus said. "Again." By the time they finished, Vivian's arms were aching, and her ears were ringing despite the protection. But something had changed in her eyes. A hardness that hadn't been there before. "I won't be helpless again," she said quietly. "No," Marcus agreed. "You won't." Shadow barked once, and both of them turned. A vehicle was approaching, an old Jeep Wrangler, military surplus by the look of it, grinding up the logging road toward the cabin. Marcus drew his weapon. "Get inside." "Is it? Stay behind the door. Don't come out unless I call you." Vivian ran inside, heart pounding. Through the window, she watched Marcus move forward. Shadow at his side, positioning himself behind the cover of his truck. The Jeep rolled to a stop. The door opened. A man stepped out. Short, stocky, with a receding hairline and thick glasses. He moved with a pronounced limp. One leg stiff and mechanical. "Put the gun down, Hawk," the man called out. "You shoot me, who's going to fix your firewall?" Marcus lowered his weapon. "Cypher, you made good time." "I always do." Cypher limped forward and embraced Marcus warmly. "You look like hell." "Feel like it too." Cypher glanced toward the cabin. "That the package? Her name is Vivian. And yes, she's the reason you're here." "Bring her out. Let's see what we're working with." Inside, Vivian had been watching through the window. When Marcus waved her forward, she emerged cautiously. Cypher studied her with analytical eyes. Then he smiled, a surprisingly warm expression on his severe face. "You must be the bride." "Cypher Chen," I fix things that explode or involve computers, usually both. Vivian Ashford. Thank you for coming. Hawk called. I came. That's how it works. He turned to Marcus. Let's see the evidence. They moved inside, and Cypher set up his equipment on the heavy oak table. A portable server encryption module's satellite uplinks. His fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced speed. This is good, he muttered, scrolling through the files. Very good. The ledger photos are clear, the metadata is intact. I can verify authenticity chain of custody, all of it. Can you get it to someone who matters? Marcus asked. DOJ National Security Division has a secure server. I can upload directly bypass local channels entirely. Once it's in the federal system, Blackwell can't make it disappear. Do it. Cypher began typing. Upload starting now. 70% done. Vivian watched the progress bar creep forward. So close. They were so close. Shadow suddenly growled. The dog had been lying by the door, but now he was on his feet, his body rigid, his eyes fixed on the window. The fur along his spine rose in a jagged ridge. Marcus froze. Cypher, how long? 80%. 2 minutes, maybe 3. We don't have 2 minutes. Marcus moved to the window. Through the trees he saw movement, shadows that didn't belong. Men in tactical gear moving in formation, closing from multiple directions. They found us, Vivian whispered. How? Cypher demanded. This location isn't on the satellite phone. Marcus's voice was grim. They must have intercepted my call, traced the handshake. 90%. Hawk, I need 90 seconds. Outside, the shadows were getting closer. Marcus counted at least 12 men. Professional coordinated. Not local muscle, these were private military contractors. Mercenaries. Shadow Guard. Marcus pointed at Vivian. Stay with her. The dog moved immediately to Vivian's side, pressing against her leg, his growl constant now. Marcus grabbed his rifle from the rack above the fireplace. Cypher, the moment that upload finishes, you get her out. Back exit down the ravine, follow the stream to the old logging camp. There's a truck there, keys under the visor. What about you? I'll buy you time. Hawk, 90 seconds. That's all I need to give you. Marcus checked his magazine. Full. Then I'll be right behind you. The first shot shattered the front window. Marcus returned fire, immediately dropping behind the overturned table. Bullets punched through the cabin walls, sending splinters flying. Stay down, he shouted. Vivian pressed herself to the floor, Shadow covering her body with his own. Cypher kept typing, his face pale, but his hands steady. Upload at 95%. Another window exploded. Marcus rolled, fired 3 shots through the opening, heard a scream outside. Contact front and left, he called out. They're flanking. The back door burst open. A mercenary rushed in, weapon raised. Shadow launched himself without hesitation, his jaws closing around the man's arm. The mercenary screamed, his gun falling. Marcus put 2 rounds in his chest. Upload complete, Cypher shouted. It's done. The evidence is in federal hands. Then go now. Cypher grabbed Vivian's arm and pulled her toward the back exit. Shadow stayed between them and the door, teeth bared. Marcus laid down, covering fire, burning through his magazine. The cabin was being torn apart around him. Wood glass insulation, everything shattered under the assault. He dropped the empty rifle and drew his sidearm. Last magazine. Maybe 15 seconds of fight left. Go! He screamed at Vivian. Run! She hesitated at the door, looking back at him. Their eyes met across the chaos. Don't die, she said. Not planning on it. Then she was gone. Cypher pulling her into the darkness, Shadow racing beside them. Marcus turned back to the fight. A flashbang came through the window. He squeezed his eyes shut, but the explosion still rocked him. His ears rang, his vision blurred. 2 men rushed through the front door. Marcus fired from the hip. One went down. The other tackled him, driving him to the floor. They struggled, grappling for control of the weapon. The mercenary was big, strong, well-trained. But Marcus had been fighting for 20 years. He headbutted the man, breaking his nose, used the momentary distraction to jam his pistol under the man's chin and pull the trigger. Blood. Silence. Marcus shoved the body off and staggered to his feet. The cabin was on fire now. The kerosene lamp had been knocked over and flames were racing up the walls. He had seconds before the whole place became his tomb. Marcus ran for the back door into the cold night air. Behind him, the cabin groaned and crumbled. Men were shouting in the trees, some pursuing, some regrouping. He found the ravine and slid down grabbing roots to control his descent. The sound of the stream led him forward. His lungs burned, his body screamed. But he kept moving. Because somewhere ahead, Vivian was running. And he had made a promise. He wouldn't fail her. Not tonight. Not ever. The logging camp appeared through the trees. An old truck sat in the clearing, rusted but functional. The engine was already running headlights, cutting through the darkness. Vivian was behind the wheel. Cypher in the back, clutching his laptop. Shadow barked furiously from the passenger seat. "Get in!" Vivian screamed. Marcus threw himself into the bed of the truck. "Drive!" She floored the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, tires spinning on the muddy ground. Behind them, flashlights pierced the trees. Gunshots cracked. Bullets whined past. But they were moving. Faster and faster down the old logging road, away from the burning cabin and the men who wanted them dead. Marcus lay in the truck bed, gasping for breath, staring up at the stars that wheeled overhead. The evidence was safe. They were alive. But Dominic Blackwell was still out there. And now he knew they were coming for him. The war had begun. 3 days changed everything. Vivian barely recognized herself in the mirror. The woman staring back at her had cold eyes and steady hands. The trembling bride who had crawled from a burning car was gone. In her place stood someone harder, someone forged in fire and fear. "You're ready," Marcus said from behind her. "No," Vivian replied, "but I'm going anyway." They had been hiding in a safe house outside Richmond, a nondescript apartment that Cypher maintained for emergencies. 3 days of planning preparation and waiting for the FBI to act on the evidence they had uploaded. But the FBI hadn't acted. "I don't understand," Vivian had said when Cypher delivered the news. "They have everything. The ledgers, the shipping records, the terrorist connections. Why aren't they arresting him?" Cypher's face was grim. Because Blackwell got to someone high up. The upload was intercepted before it reached the National Security Division, rerouted to a dead server. So it was all for nothing. Not nothing. Cypher pulled up a screen on his laptop. The data exists, it's real, but digital evidence can be dismissed as fabricated, especially when you're going up against a man with Blackwell's resources. What we need is the original source material. Marcus understood immediately. The physical ledgers. Exactly. The handwritten records in his vault. Paper trails that can't be faked ink, that can be dated handwriting that can be analyzed. That's the evidence that will bury him. Vivian felt the weight of what they were suggesting. "You want me to go back, into Thornbrook?" Not Thornbrook." Cypher pulled up another image. "Blackwell is hosting his annual charity gala tomorrow night. The Heritage Foundation benefit. 500 guests, senators, ambassadors, the cream of Washington society. And it's being held at the National Gallery of Art. Why does that matter? Because Blackwell keeps his most sensitive materials in a private vault beneath his personal office. And tomorrow night his office will be at the National Gallery. They've given him a private suite for the event, complete with secure communications. Marcus leaned forward. He'll have the ledgers with him. He never lets them out of his sight. They're his insurance policy, his leverage over everyone who's ever done business with him. Where Blackwell goes, the ledgers go. Vivian closed her eyes. The thought of being in the same room as Dominic again made her stomach turn. But she also felt something else. Something hot and sharp. Rage. "I'll do it," she said. And now here she was, 3 days later, staring at a stranger in the mirror. The emerald gown Cypher had procured fit her perfectly, clinging to her body like a second skin. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant chignon. Her makeup was flawless, her lips painted a deep crimson. She looked like a weapon. "The earpiece is in place," Cypher said through the comm. "I'll be in a van 2 blocks away. I can see the building's security feeds, but once you're inside Blackwell's private suite, you're on your own." "I won't be on my own," Vivian said. Marcus stepped into view behind her. He was wearing a midnight blue tuxedo tailored to conceal the Sig Sauer holstered beneath his left arm. His face was clean-shaven, his jaw set with determination. "You look different," Vivian said. "I look like someone who belongs at a party full of millionaires." His voice was wry. "Don't get used to it." "And Shadow," Marcus smiled grimly. "He's already in position." The National Gallery's HVAC system was a marvel of modern engineering designed to maintain perfect climate control for priceless works of art. The ventilation tunnels were large enough to accommodate maintenance workers. They were also large enough for an 80-pound Belgian Malinois. Shadow had infiltrated the building 2 hours earlier, guided by Cypher's thermal imaging. Now he waited in the ductwork above Blackwell's private suite, a living weapon ready to strike. "Remember the plan," Marcus said. "We get in, we locate the vault. We get the ledgers, we get out. No improvisation. And if we run into Dominic," Marcus's eyes went cold, "then we improvise." The gala was already in full swing when they arrived. 500 of Washington's elite mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, sipping champagne and discussing politics as if the fate of nations depended on their cocktail conversations. The air was thick with perfume and self-importance. Vivian felt sick. "Steady," Marcus murmured beside her, his hand light on the small of her back. "We're just 2 more wealthy donors. Smile and nod. I hate these people. So do I. Keep walking." They moved through the crowd, invisible in their elegance. Vivian recognized faces from magazine covers and cable news. A senator who had accepted Dominic's campaign contributions. A judge who had ruled in favor of Blackwell Industries in 3 separate lawsuits. A media mogul whose networks never ran negative stories about the Heritage Foundation. Dominic's web of corruption stretched further than she had imagined. "There," Marcus said quietly. Vivian followed his gaze and felt her heart stop. Dominic Blackwell stood at the center of the atrium, surrounded by admirers. He was wearing a white dinner jacket, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile radiating charm and confidence. He looked like a king holding court. And standing beside him, laughing at something he had said, was a woman Vivian recognized. Her mother. "Oh God," Vivian breathed. "What is it?" "That's my mother, Catherine Ashford. What is she doing here?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Blackwell's not stupid. He knows you might try something. Your mother is insurance. He's using her as a hostage. Probably. Which means we need to move fast." They circled the room, staying out of Dominic's line of sight. Vivian's mind was racing. Her mother didn't know. Couldn't know. Catherine had always been dazzled by Dominic's wealth and status, blind to the monster beneath the surface. "Private elevator to the suite is through the east corridor." Cypher's voice crackled in her ear. Security checkpoint at the base. 2 guards biometric scanner. Can you get us through? Marcus asked. I can loop the camera feed and spoof the biometrics, but I need 60 seconds once you're at the checkpoint. We'll get you 60 seconds. They reached the east corridor. 2 guards in black suits flanked a sleek elevator door, their hands clasped in front of them, their eyes scanning every face that passed. Distraction, Marcus said. Vivian nodded. She had practiced this. She stumbled forward, her champagne glass slipping from her fingers and shattering on the marble floor. The guards looked up immediately. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Vivian gasped, her voice high and embarrassed. "I'm such a klutz. Is there someone who can clean this up?" One of the guards spoke into his radio. The other stepped forward to help her. Behind them, Marcus moved. He slipped a key card from the distracted guard's pocket with fingers trained by years of covert operations. The guard never felt a thing. "Biometrics spoofed," Cypher said. "You've got a window. Go now." Marcus touched Vivian's elbow. She straightened up, smiled apologetically at the guards, and walked with him toward the elevator. The keycard worked. The door opened. They stepped inside, and the doors closed behind them. "That was too easy," Vivian whispered. "It's about to get harder." The elevator rose smoothly, depositing them in a private antechamber. Another security door stood before them, this one protected by a numeric keypad. "Cypher, we need the code." "Working on it. The encryption is military grade. Give me a minute." "We don't have a minute." Vivian's heart was pounding. They were exposed here. If anyone came through that elevator behind them, they'd be trapped. "Got it." Cypher rattled off a 6-digit code. Marcus punched it in. The door clicked open. Blackwell's private suite was elegant and clinical, a space designed for power rather than comfort. A massive desk dominated the room, flanked by shelves filled with rare books and artifacts. "The vault should be behind the bookshelf," Vivian said. "That's how Dominic operates, hidden in plain sight." "Which shelf?" Vivian scanned the room, her architect's eye seeking anomalies. The proportions were wrong. The left wall was too thick for what should be behind it. "There," she pointed. "Third shelf from the top. There should be a mechanism." Marcus moved to the shelf and began searching. His fingers found a slight depression behind a leather-bound copy of Marcus Aurelius. He pressed. The bookshelf swung inward, revealing a heavy steel door with a biometric lock. "Cypher, I've got a palm scanner and retinal verification." "I can't spoof those remotely. You need Blackwell's actual biometrics." Vivian's stomach dropped. "Then how do we—" The door behind them clicked. Marcus spun, drawing his weapon. Vivian froze. Dominic Blackwell walked into the room. He was alone. His white jacket unbuttoned, a glass of bourbon in his hand. When he saw them, he didn't seem surprised. He smiled. "Hello, darling," he said. "I was wondering when you'd come back." Marcus aimed his pistol at Dominic's chest. "Don't move, or what you'll shoot me in the middle of my own gala with 500 witnesses downstairs." Dominic laughed. "You're not that stupid, Mr. Cole. Yes, I know who you are. Navy SEAL, decorated veteran survivor of the Arghandab Valley Massacre. I've read your file." "How did you know we were here?" "I didn't, but I suspected Vivian would try something. She's stubborn that way. It's one of the things I always admired about her." Dominic's eyes shifted to Vivian. "You look beautiful, by the way. Much better than that ridiculous wedding dress." Vivian felt the old fear rising in her chest. The way he looked at her like she was a possession, a thing to be owned and controlled. But she also felt the rage. "It's over, Dominic," she said. "The FBI has your files. Your empire is crumbling." "Is it?" Dominic took a sip of his bourbon. The files you uploaded were intercepted. Your Navy SEAL friend's cabin is a pile of ashes, and your mother is downstairs completely unaware that her daughter has become a fugitive. You won't hurt her. Won't I? Dominic's smile disappeared. You stole from me, Vivian. You tried to destroy everything I've built. Do you really think there won't be consequences? The only consequence is going to be your prison cell, Marcus said. Open the vault. No. Marcus took a step forward, his weapon steady. That wasn't a request. Shoot me, and you'll never open that door. Kill me, and my lawyers release files that will destroy a dozen powerful people, all of whom will do anything to protect themselves, including making sure you never leave this building alive. Silence. Dominic had them trapped, and he knew it. Here's what's going to happen, Dominic said, his voice smooth and confident. You're going to put down that gun. Vivian is going to come with me quietly, and you, Mr. Cole, are going to disappear. Go back to your mountains, your dog, your pathetic little life. This doesn't concern you. Everything about this concerns me. Does it? Dominic tilted his head. She's not your wife. She's not your family. She's just a woman you pulled out of a car. Why would you risk your life for a stranger? Marcus didn't answer with words. He whistled. The ventilation grate in the ceiling exploded outward. Shadow dropped from above like a furry missile, 80 pounds of muscle and teeth, landing directly on Dominic Blackwell's back. The glass of bourbon flew from his hand, shattering against the wall. Dominic screamed as the dog's jaws clamped down on his shoulder, driving him to the ground. Call him off, Dominic shrieked. Call him off. Marcus moved forward and pressed his pistol to Dominic's temple. Open the vault! I can't, the dog. Shadow, ease. The Belgian Malinois released his grip but didn't move away. He stood over Dominic, growling low in his throat, his amber eyes fixed on the fallen man's face. The vault, Marcus repeated. Now! Dominic was shaking, blood seeping through his white jacket where Shadow's teeth had torn the fabric. The mask of charm and confidence had shattered. Beneath it was something small and terrified. You don't understand, Dominic gasped. The people I work for, they'll kill me and I'll kill you if you don't. At least with them you have a chance to run. With me you have nothing. Dominic looked into Marcus's eyes and saw the truth there. This man had killed before. He would kill again without hesitation. All right, Dominic whispered. All right. Marcus hauled him to his feet and dragged him to the vault door. Dominic placed his palm on the scanner, then leaned forward for the retinal verification. The door clicked open. Inside was a small room lined with safety deposit boxes, and on a central pedestal sat 3 leather-bound books, their pages filled with handwritten records. The ledgers. Get them, Marcus said to Vivian. She moved past Dominic, not looking at him, and grabbed the books. They were heavier than she expected, dense with secrets and sins. You have no idea what you're doing, Dominic said. Those ledgers contain names that will shake the foundations of this government. People will die. People have already died, Vivian said, because of you. Cypher, Marcus spoke into his comm. We have the package. What's our exit? Bad news, Hawk. Security is mobilizing. Someone triggered a silent alarm. You've got maybe 3 minutes before they lock down the building. Route, service stairs to the basement level. There's a delivery entrance on the west side. I'll have the van waiting. Move, Marcus said to Vivian. What about him? Marcus looked at Dominic, bleeding and beaten on the floor of his own vault. The man who had tried to kill Vivian. The man who had funded terrorists and corrupted politicians and destroyed countless lives. It would be so easy to pull the trigger. Tie him up, Marcus said finally. Let the FBI find him. Vivian grabbed a curtain cord from the window and bound Dominic's wrists behind his back. Shadow stood guard, growling whenever Dominic moved. "You can't run forever," Dominic hissed. "I have people everywhere, police, judges, federal agents. You'll never be safe." Vivian knelt down so she was face to face with her former husband. "I was never safe with you," she said. "At least now I get to choose my own danger." She stood and walked away without looking back. They reached the service stairs without incident. Marcus went first, weapon-drawn, Shadow padding silently beside him. Vivian followed, the ledgers clutched to her chest. The stairwell was empty. Their footsteps echoed on the concrete. "2 floors to go," Cypher said. "You're almost wait." "Hawk, stop!" Marcus froze. "What is it?" "Thermal signatures. 4 hostiles on the basement level. They're waiting for you." Vivian felt her blood go cold. "We're trapped." "Not yet." Marcus's mind was racing. "Cypher, is there another way out?" "The main gallery. If you can get to the west wing, there's an emergency exit that leads to the sculpture garden." "That's 50 yards of open ground. We'll be exposed." "It's that, or fight through 4 armed men in a confined space. Your call." Marcus looked at Vivian. She was pale, exhausted, clutching stolen evidence worth more than some countries' GDP. But her eyes were steady. "We go through the gallery," she said. "You're sure? I'm sure we're not dying in a stairwell." Marcus almost smiled. "Let's move." They emerged into the west wing of the National Gallery. Priceless paintings surrounded them, centuries of artistic achievement, watching silently as they ran. "Contact," Cypher's voice was sharp. 2 hostiles entering the gallery from the east." Marcus spun. 2 men in black tactical gear were moving toward them, weapons raised. "Down!" He shoved Vivian behind a marble pedestal and returned fire. The gallery erupted with gunshots and screaming. Somewhere an alarm began to wail. Shadow sprinted across the gallery floor, a blur of dark fur. He hit the first hostile at full speed, knocking him into a display case that shattered on impact. Marcus dropped the second man with 2 shots to the chest. "Move!" he shouted. "Don't stop!" They ran, past Renaissance masters and Impressionist landscapes, through galleries of ancient sculpture and modern abstraction. The emergency exit was ahead, a red sign glowing like salvation. Vivian hit the crash bar, and the door flew open. Cold night air rushed in. The sculpture garden stretched before them, bronze figures standing silent in the darkness. And beyond the garden, a black van with its engine running. "There," Vivian pointed. They sprinted across the grass. Behind them, more men were emerging from the museum. Gunshots cracked. Bullets whined past. Shadow yelped. Vivian spun around. The dog had stumbled, his rear leg collapsing beneath him. "Shadow!" Marcus was already running back. "No!" Vivian screamed. "Marcus, the van!" But he wasn't listening. He scooped Shadow into his arms and kept running, the dog's weight nothing against his desperate strength. They reached the van as Cypher threw open the rear doors. "Get in! Get in!" Marcus dove inside with Shadow. Vivian scrambled in behind him. Cypher slammed the doors and the van lurched forward, tires squealing. Bullets punched through the rear panels, but they were moving, accelerating away from the museum, and the men who wanted them dead. "Is he hit?" Cypher demanded. "Is the dog hit?" Marcus was already examining Shadow. The dog was whimpering, his rear leg twisted at a wrong angle. "Grazed," Marcus said, his voice tight with relief and fear. "The bullet caught his hip. It's bleeding, but it's not arterial." "We need a vet," Vivian said. "He needs surgery." "I know someone," Cypher said. "Ex-Army runs a clinic outside the city. She won't ask questions." Marcus held Shadow close, the dog's blood soaking into his ruined tuxedo. The Belgian Malinois looked up at him with trusting eyes, whining softly. "It's okay, buddy," Marcus whispered. "You did good." You did so good." Vivian reached out and stroked Shadow's head. Tears were streaming down her face. "He saved us," she said. "Again." "That's what he does." Marcus's voice was rough with emotion. "That's who he is." The van raced through the night, leaving Washington behind. In the back, surrounded by blood and stolen ledgers, and the aftermath of violence, 3 humans and 1 wounded dog huddled together. They had the evidence. They had survived. But the price had been high, and the war wasn't over yet. 3 weeks felt like 3 lifetimes. Vivian sat in the hallway of the federal courthouse, her hands clasped tight in her lap. Her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The marble floor was cold beneath her feet. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. And somewhere beyond those heavy wooden doors, Dominic Blackwell was fighting for his freedom. Marcus sat beside her, his shoulder touching hers. He hadn't left her side since the night at the museum. Not during the endless FBI interviews, not during the safe house relocations, not during the sleepless nights when the nightmares came, and she woke up screaming. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Yes, I do." The ledgers are enough. The physical evidence, the financial records. The prosecutor said my testimony would seal it. Vivian looked at him, her eyes fierce. "I'm not hiding anymore, Marcus. I'm not running. He took everything from me. My trust, my dignity, my sense of safety. Today I take it back." Marcus studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, but I'm right here. Whatever happens in there, you're not alone." The courtroom doors opened. A bailiff stepped out. "Ms. Ashford, they're ready for you." Vivian stood. Her legs felt weak, but she forced them to hold her weight. She smoothed her navy blue suit and took a breath. "Vivian." She turned. Marcus was still seated, but his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You're the bravest person I've ever known," he said. She almost broke down right there. Almost let the tears fall, but she held them back. She would cry later. Right now she had a monster to destroy. She walked through the doors and into the courtroom. It was smaller than she expected. Wood-paneled walls, rows of benches, the raised platform where Judge Catherine Monroe presided with silver hair and sharp eyes. The prosecution sat to the left, the defense to the right. And at the defense table, in an orange jumpsuit that somehow still looked expensive, sat Dominic Blackwell. He turned when she entered. Their eyes met. Vivian felt the old fear surge up, that primal terror that had controlled her for so long. Dominic smiled at her. That charming, predatory smile that had fooled her fooled everyone. But she didn't look away. She didn't flinch. She walked past him to the witness stand and raised her hand to be sworn in. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." She sat down. The prosecutor, a woman named Sarah Chen, with a reputation for dismantling criminal empires, approached the stand. "Ms. Ashford, please tell the court how you met the defendant." Vivian took a breath. "Dominic Blackwell hired me 18 months ago. I'm a historical preservationist, an architect specializing in restoration work. He wanted me to restore Thornbrook Estate in Virginia." "And what was your relationship with Mr. Blackwell?" "He courted me, charmed me, made me believe he was everything I'd ever wanted." Vivian's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "He proposed after 6 months. I said yes." "When did you first suspect something was wrong?" "About 2 months before the wedding. Small things at first. Phone calls he'd take in private. Men who visited the estate at strange hours. The way his mood would shift without warning from charming to terrifying in seconds." "Objection?" The defense attorney, Marcus Vane, rose from his seat. He was slick and polished, the kind of lawyer who made his living getting guilty men acquitted. The witness is speculating about my client's emotional state. Overruled, Judge Monroe said. The witness may describe her observations. Continue. Vivian continued. She told them about finding the hidden tunnel, about the vault full of stolen artifacts, about the ledgers with their damning records of transactions and payments. And when you discovered this evidence, what did you do? I took photographs. I copied everything I could onto an SD card. Then I tried to leave. What happened when you tried to leave? Vivian's jaw tightened. Dominic caught me. He forced me into a wedding dress. His men held me down while they did my makeup. He told me if I didn't smile during the ceremony, he would have my mother killed. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Monroe banged her gavel. And after the ceremony, he put me in a limousine. He kissed my cheek and told me he loved me. Then the doors locked automatically. The car started driving by itself. There was no driver. The brakes didn't work. Vivian's voice cracked. The car went off a cliff. It exploded. I should have died. But you didn't die. No. A man and his dog pulled me from the wreckage. They saved my life. That man is Marcus Cole, the Navy SEAL who has been protecting you these past weeks. Yes. Sarah Chen walked to her table and retrieved a thick file. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence the original ledgers recovered from Mr. Blackwell's private vault, along with expert authentication of the handwriting ink analysis and paper dating. So entered. The prosecutor spent the next hour walking Vivian through the contents of the ledgers. Names, dates, amounts. Shell companies and terrorist organizations. A web of corruption that stretched across continents and touched the highest levels of government. Through it all, Dominic watched with cold eyes. His smile was gone. Finally, Marcus Vane rose for cross-examination. Ms. Ashford, isn't it true that you were experiencing significant stress in the weeks before your wedding? I was stressed because my fiancé was a criminal who was planning to kill me. You claim Mr. Blackwell forced you into the wedding, but there are photographs of you smiling, laughing, dancing at the reception. Would a woman being held against her will look so happy? Vivian felt the anger rise in her chest. I was smiling because he threatened to murder my mother if I didn't. I was dancing because I thought it might be the last night of my life. You broke into Mr. Blackwell's private office at the National Gallery. You stole property that belonged to him. Isn't it possible that these so-called ledgers are fabrications created to destroy a man who rejected you? He didn't reject me. He tried to murder me. You have no proof of that. The limousine crash was investigated and determined to be an accident caused by mechanical failure. The investigation was conducted by people your client had bribed. Objection. Vane's face reddened. Your Honor, sustained. Judge Monroe looked at Vivian sternly. Ms. Ashford, please confine yourself to answering the questions asked. The cross-examination continued for another 30 minutes. Vane tried every trick in the book, implying Vivian was mentally unstable, suggesting she had invented the entire conspiracy for attention. Questioning her relationship with Marcus, insinuating impropriety. But Vivian held firm. She answered every question with clarity and calm. She didn't let him rattle her. Finally, Vane sat down, visibly frustrated. Your Honor, Sarah Chen said, the prosecution rests. We request that bail be denied given the severity of the charges, the flight risk posed by the defendant's extensive international connections, and the attempted murder of the primary witness. Mr. Vane, the defense attorney stood. Your Honor, my client is a respected philanthropist with deep ties to this community. He has never been convicted of any crime. The charges are based on stolen evidence and the testimony of a scorned woman. We request bail be set at a reasonable amount. Judge Monroe was silent for a long moment. The courtroom held its breath. "Given the nature of the charges," she said finally, "including international smuggling, terrorism, financing, and attempted murder, bail is denied. The defendant will be remanded to federal custody until trial." The gavel banged. Vivian felt the tears finally break free. Relief, exhaustion, vindication all crashing over her at once. She had done it. She had faced the monster and won. The marshals moved to cuff Dominic. He stood slowly, his eyes never leaving Vivian's face. "This isn't over," he said loud enough for her to hear. "You think you've won. You have no idea what's coming." The marshals pulled him toward the side door. He didn't resist, but his smile was back. That terrible knowing smile. Vivian walked out of the courtroom on shaking legs. Marcus was waiting in the hallway, Shadow beside him. The dog's hip was still wrapped in bandages, but he was standing, his tail wagging when he saw her. "You did it," Marcus said. "We did it." She knelt down and wrapped her arms around Shadow, burying her face in his fur. The dog whined softly and licked her cheek. "Let's go home," she whispered. They walked toward the courthouse lobby. The building was busy with lawyers, clerks, civilians going about their daily business. Marcus kept his hand on Vivian's back, guiding her through the crowd. Shadow suddenly stopped. The dog's ears went flat against his skull. His body went rigid. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Marcus froze. "Something's wrong." "What? Don't move." He scanned the lobby. Dozens of people moving in all directions. A janitor pushing a trash cart. A courier in a motorcycle helmet waiting by the security desk. A woman in a business suit talking on her phone. Nothing obviously wrong. But Shadow was never wrong. The courier moved. His hand reached into his bag and came out with a gun. "Down!" Marcus shouted, shoving Vivian toward a marble pillar. The first shot cracked through the air, shattering a window behind them. Screams erupted. People scattered in every direction. Marcus drew his weapon and returned fire, but the courier had already ducked behind a support column. The janitor abandoned his cart and pulled a shotgun from beneath the trash bags. 2 shooters. Coordinated. Professional. "Federal building," Marcus yelled at the fleeing crowd. "Call security, but it would take time. Too much time." The janitor raised his shotgun. Marcus was out of position, caught between 2 threats. Shadow didn't hesitate. The Belgian Malinois launched himself across the marble floor, his wounded hip screaming in protest, but his heart knowing only one thing. Protect the pack. Protect Vivian. The janitor swung his weapon toward the charging dog. Shadow leaped. The shotgun blast caught him in midair. Vivian screamed. Shadow's body twisted, blood spraying across the white marble. He hit the ground hard, sliding to a stop just feet from Vivian's position. Marcus fired 3 shots. The janitor went down. He spun and caught the courier with 2 more rounds as the man tried to flank them. Silence. Both shooters were dead. Security officers were finally rushing in, weapons drawn, shouting commands that nobody was listening to. But Marcus wasn't looking at them. He was running toward Shadow. "No, no, 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 no!" He dropped to his knees beside the dog. Shadow was lying on his side, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Blood pooled beneath him, spreading across the cold marble. "Shadow. Hey, buddy, look at me." The dog's eyes found Marcus. They were glazed with pain, but there was still recognition there. Still love. "Medic!" Marcus screamed. "I need a medic!" Vivian crawled to his side, her hands pressing against Shadow's wounds. There was so much blood. Too much blood. "He saved me," she sobbed. "Again. He saved me again." "Don't you die on me," Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. Don't you dare die on me. That's an order, soldier. You hear me? That's an order. Shadow whimpered softly. His tail twitched once, trying to wag, trying to reassure his human that everything was okay. But it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. The paramedics arrived. They tried to push Marcus aside, but he wouldn't move, wouldn't let go of his dog's paw. Sir, we need to work. He's not just a dog. He's my family. He's all I have. Vivian put her hand on Marcus's shoulder. Let them help him. Please. Marcus looked at her, his eyes red and wet with tears. She had never seen him cry before. In all the chaos and violence they had survived together, he had always been the rock, the unshakable foundation. Now he was shattered. I can't lose him, Marcus whispered. I've lost everyone else, my team, my brothers. I can't lose him too. You won't. He's a fighter. Like you. The paramedics loaded Shadow onto a stretcher. The dog's eyes never left Marcus's face, even as they carried him toward the waiting ambulance. Marcus and Vivian followed, still holding hands, still covered in blood that wasn't their own. Behind them, the courthouse erupted into chaos. News vans were arriving. Police were cordoning off the scene. And somewhere in the federal holding facility, Dominic Blackwell was learning that his final assassination attempt had failed. But none of that mattered right now. All that mattered was the dog fighting for his life in the back of an ambulance. The veterinary hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. Marcus paced the waiting room like a caged animal, back and forth, his boots wearing a path in the linoleum. Vivian sat in a plastic chair, her navy suit ruined with blood and tears, watching him. He's been in surgery for 3 hours, Marcus said. I know. What's taking so long? They said the damage was extensive, the hip, the internal bleeding. Marcus slammed his fist against the wall. I should have seen them, the shooters. I should have known. You couldn't have known. Shadow knew. He tried to warn me and I wasn't fast enough. Vivian stood and walked to him. She put her hands on his chest, forcing him to stop pacing. Listen to me. Shadow saved my life. He chose to protect me knowing the risk. That's who he is. That's who you trained him to be. A hero. He shouldn't have had to be a hero. I should have protected him. You can't protect everyone from everything, Marcus. Sometimes the people who love us make sacrifices we can't prevent. Marcus looked at her. In the harsh hospital light, he could see the exhaustion in her face, the trauma, the grief. But he could also see something else, something fierce and unbreakable. Why did you come back? He asked suddenly. What, at the museum? When Shadow went down, I told you to run, but you came back. Vivian was quiet for a moment. Because I couldn't leave you. Either of you. You barely knew us. 2 weeks ago, I was just a stranger who pulled you from a car. 2 weeks ago, I was a different person. Scared, helpless, running from my own shadow. She touched his face gently. You and Shadow gave me something I'd lost. The courage to fight. How could I leave that behind? Marcus covered her hand with his own. His skin was rough-scarred from years of war, but his touch was tender. I thought I was done saving people, he said quietly. After my team died, I thought that part of me was dead too. I came to these mountains to disappear, to let the silence swallow me. What changed? You, that night on the cliff. When I pulled you from the fire, something woke up inside me. Something I thought I'd buried with my brothers. What? Hope. The surgery room doors swung open. A woman in scrubs walked out, her face unreadable. Marcus's heart stopped. Mr. Cole, how is he? The vet pulled off her surgical cap. The surgery was complicated. The shotgun blast damaged his hip joint and several major blood vessels. We had to insert titanium pins and perform multiple transfusions. But he's alive. He's alive. The vet smiled slightly. He's a fighter, that one. Most dogs wouldn't have survived the blood loss, but his heart rate stayed strong the whole time. It's like he refused to give up. Marcus's legs nearly gave out. Vivian caught his arm, steadying him. When can I see him? He's in recovery now. He'll be sedated for the next few hours, but you can sit with him if you'd like. Marcus nodded. He couldn't speak. The relief was too overwhelming. The vet led them to a small recovery room. Shadow lay on a padded table, his body wrapped in bandages, an IV dripping fluids into his leg. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow and steady. But he was breathing. He was alive. Marcus pulled a chair close and sat down. He took Shadow's paw in his hand, careful not to disturb the medical equipment. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. "I'm here. I'm right here." Shadow's ear twitched. His tail moved slightly. "You did so good. You saved her. You saved both of us. Now you just rest. I'm not going anywhere." Vivian stood behind Marcus, her hand on his shoulder. They stayed like that for a long time, watching the dog they both loved fight his way back from the edge. Outside the hospital, the world was moving on. The news was reporting the courthouse shooting. Dominic Blackwell's attempted assassination of his ex-wife. The final desperate act of a criminal empire in collapse. Federal prosecutors had already added new charges: conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering, terrorism. Dominic would never see the outside of a prison cell again. Justice had been served. But in the recovery room, none of that mattered. What mattered was the rise and fall of a dog's chest, the warmth of a hand in a hand, the quiet miracle of survival against all odds. Marcus looked at Vivian. "Thank you," he said. "For what? For being here, for not leaving, for giving me something worth fighting for again." Vivian leaned down and kissed his forehead. "Thank you for saving my life," she whispered. "All three of you." Shadow opened his eyes. Just for a moment, just a sliver of amber looking up at the two humans who loved him. His tail wagged once, weak, but unmistakable. Then his eyes closed again, and he drifted back into healing sleep. The war was over. Now came the work of learning how to live again. 6 months changed the shape of the world. Vivian stood on the porch of the rebuilt cabin, a cup of coffee warm in her hands, watching the morning light spill through the Blue Ridge Mountains. The air smelled of pine and wildflowers, clean and alive in a way she had never known before. Behind her, she could hear Marcus moving in the kitchen, the familiar rhythm of his footsteps on the wooden floor. This was home now, not the mansion where she had been held prisoner, not the cold apartments where she had hidden in fear. This place carved out of wilderness and built by hands that had seen war was where she belonged. "Breakfast is ready," Marcus called out. "Coming." She turned and walked inside. The cabin had been transformed over the past months. After the fire during the attack, they had rebuilt it together. Vivian had designed the changes, opening up walls to let in light, adding reinforced windows that were bulletproof but beautiful. Marcus had done the construction, working with his hands, finding peace in the labor. It was their creation, a fusion of strength and beauty, just like them. Shadow was waiting by the kitchen table, his tail wagging in slow, patient sweeps. The Belgian Malinois had survived his injuries, but he walked with a permanent limp now. 3 titanium pins held his hip together, and he would never run with the fluid grace he once had. But he was alive. He was happy. And every morning, when he saw Vivian, his tail still wagged like she was the best thing in his world. "Good morning, hero," Vivian said, bending down to scratch behind his ears. Shadow licked her hand and whined contentedly. Marcus set 2 plates on the table. Eggs, bacon, toast. Simple food cooked with care. He had learned to cook during the recovery months, when Vivian was too exhausted from depositions and trials to do anything but sleep. "You were up early," he said, sitting across from her. "Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about the sentencing." Marcus nodded slowly. Today was the day. After 6 months of trials, evidence presentations, and legal maneuvering, Dominic Blackwell would finally learn his fate. "Are you going to watch? Cypher is streaming it. I don't need to be there in person anymore." Vivian took a bite of her eggs. "I've said everything I needed to say. Now it's up to the judge." "You're not worried about Dominic getting off?" Vivian shook her head. "No. The evidence was overwhelming. The ledgers, the financial records, the testimony from his former employees who turned state's witness. He's going to prison for the rest of his life." "But," she looked at him. Marcus always knew when something was troubling her. He could read her like no one else ever had. "I'm worried about what comes after," she admitted. "For so long, my whole life has been about surviving him, running from him, fighting him. What do I do when he's not the enemy anymore?" Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. His skin was rough, calloused, but his touch was gentle. "You live," he said simply. "You build something new, something that's yours." "Ours," she corrected. He smiled. That rare, genuine smile that she had come to treasure. "Ours." The laptop chimed. Cypher's face appeared on the screen, his thick glasses reflecting the glow of multiple monitors behind him. "It's starting," he said. "Judge Monroe is about to deliver the sentence." They gathered around the screen, shadow settling at their feet. The courtroom feed showed Dominic Blackwell standing at the defense table, his orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the expensive suits he had once worn. He looked older, thinner, diminished. The charm was gone. In its place was the hollow shell of a man who had lost everything. Judge Monroe spoke with cold precision. "Dominic Alexander Blackwell, you have been found guilty on 47 counts, including international smuggling, terrorism, financing, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted murder. The evidence presented in this case revealed a criminal enterprise of staggering scope, one that endangered national security and cost innocent lives." Dominic stood motionless, his face betraying nothing. "It is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 7 consecutive life terms in federal prison without the possibility of parole. You will spend the rest of your natural life behind bars with no hope of release." The gavel fell. Vivian let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. It was over. Finally. Truly over. On the screen, marshals moved to escort Dominic from the courtroom. He turned just for a moment and looked directly at the camera. His eyes were cold, empty, defeated. Then he was gone. "How do you feel?" Marcus asked quietly. "Free," Vivian whispered. "For the first time in years, I feel free." Cypher's face reappeared on the screen. "Congratulations, you two. Justice served." "Thank you, Cypher, for everything." "Hey, Hawk called. I came. That's always how it works," he grinned. "Besides, this was the most exciting thing I've done since Fallujah. A man needs a little adventure in his life." "Stay safe, old friend," Marcus said. "You too, Hawk. Take care of her." Always. The screen went dark. Vivian turned to Marcus. The weight that had been pressing on her chest for so long was finally lifting. She could breathe. She could think about tomorrow without fear. "What do we do now?" she asked. Marcus looked at her, then at Shadow, then out the window at the mountains that surrounded them. "Now," he said, "we build a life worth living." The months that followed were a slow, careful healing. Vivian threw herself into her work. She and Marcus had started a business together designing secure homes for people who needed protection. Witnesses in hiding, domestic abuse survivors, anyone who needed a sanctuary but refused to live in a bunker. She designed the spaces with an architect's eye for beauty, creating homes that felt open and warm despite their security features. Marcus engineered the protection systems, drawing on his military experience to create defensive measures that were effective but invisible. They called it Cole and Ashford Sanctuary Systems. Their first client was a woman named Maria, a mother of 2 who had escaped an abusive husband. The man had connections, resources, a history of violence. Maria had been living in fear for years, moving from shelter to shelter, never feeling safe. They built her a home in the Virginia countryside, reinforced walls hidden behind cheerful paint, security cameras disguised as garden decorations, a panic room accessible from every bedroom designed to look like a walk-in closet. When Maria walked through the finished house, she cried. "I never thought I'd feel safe again," she said. "You gave me my life back." Vivian hugged her, remembering what it felt like to be that scared, that hopeless. "You gave yourself your life back. We just built you a place to live it." More clients followed. A journalist who had exposed a drug cartel, a prosecutor who had put away a mob boss, a teenage girl who had testified against her traffickers. Each one came to Cole and Ashford, broken by fear, and each one left with a home that would protect them. It wasn't the kind of architecture Vivian had dreamed of when she was in school. She had wanted to restore historical buildings, preserve the past, create beauty that would last for centuries. But this was better. This was saving lives. This was using her talents for something that mattered. And through it all, Marcus was beside her. They didn't rush into anything. The trauma they had shared was too deep for that. There were nightmares and flashbacks, moments when Vivian would freeze at the sound of a car backfiring, or Marcus would wake up screaming names she didn't recognize. But they faced it together. They talked when they needed to talk, and sat in silence when words weren't enough. They learned each other's wounds and helped them heal. Shadow was their anchor. The dog seemed to sense when one of them was struggling, and he would appear at their side, his warm body a comfort, his loyal eyes a reminder that they weren't alone. His limp never got better, but it didn't slow him down. He still patrolled the property every morning, still barked at squirrels, still insisted on sleeping at the foot of their bed. The titanium in his hip was a badge of honor, proof that he had walked through fire and survived. One evening, as summer turned to autumn and the mountains blazed with color, Marcus found Vivian on the porch, staring at the sunset. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "My parents." Marcus sat down beside her. They rarely talked about her family. Catherine Ashford had never apologized for choosing Dominic over her own daughter. She had attended the trial, but she sat on Dominic's side, believing his lies until the very end. "Have you heard from them?" "My mother called last week. She wants to reconcile." Vivian's voice was flat. "She says she didn't know. She says she was fooled just like everyone else." "Do you believe her?" "I believe she believed what she wanted to believe." Vivian finally looked at him. "She chose status over her own child. She told me I was being dramatic when I said I was scared. How do you forgive something like that?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "You don't have to forgive." Not if you're not ready. Not if you're never ready. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. But carrying that anger forever will hurt you more than it hurts her. At some point you have to decide whether you want to keep that weight or set it down. Vivian leaned her head against his shoulder. When did you get so wise? I had a lot of time to think in those mountains, before you crashed into my life. She laughed softly. I didn't crash. Dominic crashed me. Either way, I'm glad you're here. So am I. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink below the mountains. Shadow hobbled out to join them, collapsing at their feet with a contented sigh. I've been thinking, Vivian said eventually. Dangerous habit. About what comes next, for us. Marcus looked at her. In the fading light, she was beautiful. Not the artificial beauty she had worn for Dominic's parties, but something real and raw and alive. The beauty of someone who had survived. What do you want? He asked. I want to stay here. In this place we built together. I want to keep doing this work, helping people feel safe. I want to wake up every morning and see you in Shadow and know that I'm home. That sounds like a plan. It sounds like a life. She turned to face him fully. Marcus, I spent so long being afraid. Afraid of Dominic, afraid of the future, afraid of trusting anyone. But with you, I'm not afraid anymore. You gave me that. You gave yourself that. I just watched. You did more than watch. You fought for me. You nearly died for me. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Marcus took her hand. Because I saw who you really were. Not the victim Dominic tried to create. Not the scared woman in the burning car. I saw the fighter underneath, the survivor. The woman who was strong enough to bring down an empire. I couldn't have done it without you. You could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to. Vivian squeezed his hand. I love you, Marcus. I think I've loved you since you pulled me out of that fire. Marcus's eyes shimmered in the dying light. He had faced death 100 times without flinching. But this vulnerability, this openness was harder than any battlefield. I love you too, he said. I thought that part of me was dead. After my team, after everything I lost. I thought I'd never feel this again. Feel what? Hope. Like the future might actually be worth living. Shadow whined softly, sensing the emotion in the air. His tail thumped against the porch floor. I think he approves, Vivian said. He always had good taste. They laughed, the sound carrying into the twilight. And then Marcus was reaching into his pocket, pulling out something small. Vivian's breath caught. It wasn't a ring. Not a diamond, not gold, not anything like what Dominic had given her. Instead, Marcus held a simple band woven from mountain grass and tiny wildflowers, fragile and beautiful and utterly unique. I know this isn't traditional, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I don't have a fortune or a family name or anything to offer except what I am. A broken soldier with a scarred dog and a cabin in the mountains. Marcus, let me finish. He took a breath. I've spent my whole life fighting. For my country, for my team, for survival. I never thought I'd have something worth fighting for that wasn't a mission or an objective. But then I found you, and everything changed. Vivian felt tears spilling down her cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. I promise to protect you. Not because you need protecting, but because you deserve someone who will stand with you against anything. I promise to build a life with you that's real and safe and ours. I promise to love you every single day until I can't anymore. He held up the woven ring, his hand trembling slightly. Vivian Ashford, will you marry me? She looked at the ring. It would wilt in a weak fade and fall apart. It was the opposite of everything Dominic had given her, opposite of the cold diamond that had felt like a chain around her finger. It was perfect. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Marcus slid the ring onto her finger. It fit like it had always belonged there. He pulled her into a kiss, deep and slow and full of promise. The sun slipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, and somewhere in the gathering darkness, a new chapter was beginning. Shadow barked once, loud and joyful. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the stiffness in his hip, and pushed his way between them, his tail wagging furiously. "I think someone feels left out." Vivian laughed. Marcus knelt down and wrapped his arms around the dog. "You're part of this too, buddy. You're part of this family." Shadow licked his face and whined happily. They stayed on the porch as the stars came out, the three of them together. A man who had lost everything and found a reason to live. A woman who had walked through fire and emerged stronger. A dog who had given his body to protect the people he loved. The war was over. The nightmares would fade. And in their place, something new was growing. Something built on trust and courage and the kind of love that survives the darkest nights. Marcus looked at Vivian, at the ring of wildflowers on her finger, at the peace finally settling into her eyes. "No regrets?" he asked. "Only one," she said. "What? That I didn't find you sooner." He smiled that rare and precious smile that she treasured more than any diamond. "We found each other exactly when we were supposed to. Not a moment too early or too late." "How do you know?" "Because if it had been any different, we wouldn't be who we are now. The fire made us. The fight made us. We had to go through all of it to end up here." Vivian leaned into him, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong against her cheek. "Then I'm grateful for all of it," she said. "Even the worst parts, because they led me to you." Shadow yawned and settled at their feet, his eyes already closing. His job was done. His pack was safe. He could rest. Marcus pressed a kiss to Vivian's forehead. "Ready to go inside?" "In a minute. I want to remember this." "Remember what?" "This feeling, this moment, the first moment of the rest of our lives." They sat in the darkness, surrounded by mountains and stars, and the endless possibility of tomorrow. They had faced monsters and survived. They had lost everything and found each other. They had walked through the fire and come out the other side not unscathed, but unbroken. And now, finally, they were home. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear that healing is possible. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. And now let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for being the shelter in every storm. Just as you sent help to those in need in this story, we ask that you watch over everyone listening right now. Protect them from the dangers they cannot see. Heal the wounds that no one else knows they carry. Surround them with people who will love them and fight for them. Give them the courage to trust again, even after betrayal. Give them the strength to rebuild, even after everything falls apart. And remind them that no matter how dark the night, the dawn always comes. May they find their own sanctuary of peace, love, and joy. May they know that they are never truly alone. If you believe that God is your protector, and that He can turn your darkest night into a beautiful sunrise, please type Amen in the comments below. May God bless you and keep you safe today and always. The bride's car exploded that night on the mountain road. But from the fire and ashes, 3 survivors found each other. A warrior who had lost his purpose. A woman who had lost her freedom. A dog who had given everything to protect them both. Together, they built something stronger than fear, brighter than fire, and more enduring than any empire of lies. They built a home, they built a family, they built a love that would last forever. And in the end, that is the only victory that truly matters.